Fine, so we'll start now. Now, if you see, today's objective is to understand what and how actually we will be doing installation, and probably in next session we will kick with installation, where I will prepare a machine for you in front of you. We will see what prerequisite is, and we will try to follow architecture which Ehsan is using at his workplace, right? So we'll be doing installation of 11 as well as installation of 12, and we'll set up an architecture which Ehsan probably is using. Rather, we will simulate his work environment, where actually you say there are 3 different environments in which he is working. One is test and queue environment, and second one is production environment, right? And then I'll be taking up a case study on which I have worked or I have supported. It's basically 50 to 60 nodes cluster again, where you will have complete architecture, which includes your database, which includes your message-oriented middleware. I will show you how to configure WebSphere MQ as well, because going forward, Ehsan, like they might be using some or other you say product for messaging. Today might be they are not using, but in future probably they will be using it, right? Okay. And when it comes to what role you will be playing, your role will be basically application management. So if you can see my screen here, I have various units like WebLogic server is there, then you have BA Tuxedo. So Tuxedo is also from BA, that is from WebLogic, now bought by Oracle, which takes responsibility of integration. So in most of the applications you will find Tuxedo also being used. So I will show you how actually you can communicate with Tuxedo even, right? So these are few things that we'll be talking about. I'll be sharing all my content with you, which includes definitely Oracle 11, Oracle 12c, and Tuxedo material, as well as portal server, because you know some of the companies are using WebLogic portal also, and how actually WebLogic administrator has to get involved in WebLogic portal server. So these are few things that we'll be working around. Today what we will do, we'll quickly have a discussion that how actually we need to do installation, what is the directory structure, right, of installation, what is the domain, how actually we will go and install domain, what all different ways are there of working with domain, right? Once you have done installation, you will get different ways of administrating your WebLogic cluster. One of them is by using console, that is web console, and second one is by using command line, right? And then we will talk about how to write script by using languages which are supported by WebLogic for writing scripts, right, which is Python. And probably that becomes the right point when we will start you say analyzing and start depicting what all administrative scripts are required that need to be there in our repository as a WebLogic administrator, right? So today we will talk about installation, we'll talk about what a domain is, and we'll talk about how actually you can plan your domain and what all different elements are there which can be there part of domain. Once this is done, probably next session when we will start with installation, where I will have my box, you will have your boxes, and step by step together we will build a domain. As I told you, we'll try to adopt architecture of Ehsan, followed by my architecture, and obviously Philip can also suggest us what all other architectures are there which he has seen till today with his own experience, right? Fine. Now, when we talk about installation is one of the simplest tasks of WebLogic, right? But before we start installing, we need to have proper plan of installation, right? Because we need to get the right package that we are using. I'm muting you. You can unmute yourself when you have any questions. So first thing is we need to plan, and our planning depends on the enterprise application that we are going to support. So these are few very important things that you need to consider whether you are going to support or you are going to you say work with WebLogic, right? So before I go and start with installation process altogether, let's go and plan what we need to know, what we need to get the right architecture, right? So there are different perspectives, there are different questions that you need to ask. First question is, where will we install WebLogic? This is what is first question that you need to ask. Where will we install WebLogic, right? So WebLogic is a software which can be installed on various operating systems. So you can install it on Windows, you can install it on Linux, you can install it on various flavors of Linux, right? Linux, you need to ask what flavor. This is what is first question that we need to ask. Now, second important thing that you need to ask is what must be the architecture. So here you need to decide whether you will go with standalone, where you have single server which contains your applications, or your applications need to be deployed on. Second one is, instead of standalone, you can also go with distributed architecture. When your concern is workload management, that is WLM, when your concern is load balancing, when your concern is using the capacity, and what capacity? Compute capacity of your system, right? If your need is to take care of failover in order to ensure availability, you have to probably go with distributed clustered architecture, right? So one option is you can go with distributed architecture. Other option is, in case if you need workload management, you need failover, specifically failover, right? Then you need to plan distributed clustered architecture. So you have to first find out what is your need, right? Why do we need to use WebLogic? Fine. And then what is the operating system on which WebLogic need to be installed? And then whether our architecture will be standalone or it will be distributed clustered architecture. Now, probably distributed clustered architecture will be needed when your responsibility is workload management, balancing, capacity planning, compute capacity planning, not storage, and failover, right? So when this need is there, you have to go with distributed clustered architecture, right? And one of the, again, very important question is what JEE components we need to manage. And when I say manage, it's basically what? It's deploy, monitor, troubleshoot, and fine tune. When I say tuning, it includes performance tuning as well, right? So these are typical activities. Apart from this, you may also have need of migration, right? So these are typical activities that you will be doing on JEE components, right? Deploying it, monitoring it. Monitoring will result in some issues, troubleshoot it, and tune it. When I say tuning, it is tuning the application as well as tuning for performance, where you need to consider different layers which are part of your WebLogic installation. Migration is also sometimes becomes very important, because when your components version will increase, you need to migrate your current work from X version to Y version, right? How actually you will be doing it? You need to have proper plan in order to migrate from X version to Y version, right? And that's what is your role as an administrator SR when it comes to WebLogic, right? You need to set right diagnostic tools in order to keep on monitoring health. Whenever there is a bad response from a component, and when your developer tells you about that, you need to segregate that problem, identify that problem, whether it's an administrative problem or it's a development problem, and then probably you need to have your own action plan to sort it out, right? So these are few things that need to be clear to you before you start installation.
right? So gather information accordingly so that you have right understanding about your existing WebLogic installation, or you can plan new installation once you have these inputs, right? So this is what is the thing that you need to understand, right? Now, objective of this particular session, which I might have already shared these slides with you. Apart from this, I'll be sharing some guides also with you, but most important when we do practical in your environment, right? Which I will be taking up Linux, right? Flavor of Linux. I'll be giving you also those flavors so that you can also work on it. Now, how to install a WebLogic server? Obviously, first you need to have the right package, right? What type of installation you need and what packages are there that you need to download, right? If you are using Linux, your download will be different. If you are using Windows, your download will be different. It means now WebLogic has distributed, or the WebLogic distribution is of two types. One is operating system specific and second one is generic. Whether you are on Linux box or Mac box or Windows, there is a version which they have written that takes care of reading the underlying operating system and then probably starting up the installation. So there are two flavors. One is generic and second is operating system specific, right? Now how to install? See, there are different ways of doing installation. One is GUI, second one is CUI. But before you start installation, you need to set up the environment, right? You need to set up the environment. When I say, you need to ensure that you have right prerequisite met for installation of WebLogic, right? That's what you need to keep in mind. So what all we need to consider before we start, right? Before moving to what they say, I'll talk about what we need to understand. I'll write here installation prerequisite. First thing is JDK, right? Which version of JDK you need? Which version of JDK? Now, why this version is important? Because if you go with 12C, 12C cannot be installed on JDK 1.4 or 1.5, right? You need 1.6 for it. Why? Because there is upgrade in WebLogic version because of one obvious reason, and that reason is upgradation in JEE specifications itself, right? So if you see, you have JEE upgradation which started from J2EE 1.4, it went to JEE 5 and it went to JEE 6, and now we are talking about JEE 7, right? And probably JEE 8 work is already on, right? So if there is upgrade in version of your container or of your JEE specification, obviously you need upgrade in your WebLogic server, and also you need to ensure that you have the right JDK version installed which supports the right version of JEE. So this is what is first important consideration that you have to keep in mind. Second important thing is what must be the memory configuration of underlying JVM, right? I mean to say, what should be the heap size? So you have to decide max, min heap sizes, right? You have to adopt right GC policy, and also you have to decide which JDK you need to go for. For example, you have Oracle JDK and you have JRocket. So when Oracle bought WebLogic from BEA, there was an operating system, there was a JVM or Java called as JRocket, which was customized for WebLogic. But now since it is taken over by Oracle, you will have good support even for Oracle JDK, right? So you need to decide which JDK. Never try to install WebLogic on IBM WebSphere, or you can say IBM JDK or OpenJDK, because they are not tested. Your WebLogic is not tested on all this, right? So you need to ensure that you are having the right JDK, and setup of JDK must be appropriate, right? So depending on number of containers that you want, you have to go and tune your JDK or JVM configuration accordingly. Right, so this is what is very important information that you need to gather. So probably you need to know some commands, you need to know certain things which helps you to tune your JDK and make your JDK appropriate for your WebLogic installation, right? So heap JDK version, right? And that all you will come to know by understanding what is the component makeup that actually you have to follow. Fine. Now, other important thing that you need to understand here is what all configurations you need to do. For example, do you need to connect to database? Do you need to manage connection pool to DB? Do you need to connect to web services? Do you need to connect to MOM? Right? So these are few things that actually you need to have gathered, information gathering you might have done in order to understand. Yeah, Philip, you have to send me the appropriate problem. Now I'm back to work, so I'll be able to manage it. I don't know what error you are getting, but once you let me know the error or the problem, probably I may do something there. Okay, fine. So connect to MOM. These are some of the information that you need to have before you go ahead and plan your installation.
Your MOM is like a monitoring?
No, it's message oriented middleware.
Message oriented middleware. Okay.
It's like MQ or Tuxedo or TIPCO. Any one of them. There are hundreds of messaging environments available today. Okay. Fine. Now you have to plan your installation. So if you see here, WebLogic server can be installed in 3 different ways. One is GUI mode, that is full support. It's like a GUI installer where you have to just go and click on next after identifying your elements that you want. Then you have console mode, right? No GUI, because you may have certain operating system which may not support GUI, so you need to do console installation. Then third one is silent mode. See, these two, when I say, are interactive. It means you need to answer. You need to here click on next, and here you need to interact by saying that yes or no, right? Depending on the component which is going to get installed, right? Now assume that I want to replicate the installation that I have done. Again, remembering what component I selected in GUI mode and what all yes and no's I selected when we went for console mode becomes tedious. And even if you have done that, that number of interventions which are required are huge, because whenever you will go and install WebLogic, you need to go and you need to specify all that, right? In order to avoid that, what you can do is you can maintain an XML file, that what all will be your answers to different questions. So you can say that one XML file will be there where you will specify all your yes and no's or components that you want to install, and you will submit to silent installer, right? Now you need not worry, because all your answers, all your questions are there in your silent mode XML file. Your silent mode installation starts, reads entries from that XML file, and without your intervention, it completes the installation. So in case if you have to replicate installation on various boxes, silent mode is preferred one, right? Because you can write a script, and that script can kickstart installation on 10 boxes where you can have similar properties instead of going and installing on one, you can say one after the other, right? So this becomes very important to decide which type of installation will you go ahead with, right? Now, do make sure that your current operating system supports WebLogic server, right? So you will have a list which will be there provided to you, or it is almost there on the website also. That helps you to decide whether I can go and install WebLogic server on my box or not. So Linux, all popular operating systems will support it. HP Unix, Windows 2000, 2003, even XP supports installation of WebLogic server installation or WebLogic server. These are few things that you need to understand. Now when it comes to what will be the hardware requirement for typical WebLogic installation. So minimum 1 GHz CPU, Intel and Unix processors are also supported. Then hard disk drive. Your WebLogic installation requires 2 GB of free space because it has to extract certain temporary files and it has to use it during installation process. After installation, again it will be cleaned up, but it needs free space so that it can keep its extracted data there. The Linux value for file descriptor must be 4096 or greater, and samples are optional. You need not go ahead with sample installation. So typically make sure that you have 2 GB of disk space. Then comes memory. What is the RAM? Minimum of 2 GB is what is recommended, right? But these 2 GB is typically used for POCs, right? Proof of concept. Consider the number of simultaneous users and sessions which will be invoked, and then probably plan what should be the processing capability in terms of memory, right? Also consider in-memory programs such as coherence, because when you go for it, amount of memory that you need may increase. So resource constraints, when it comes, it is 2 GB, but when you want efficiency, when you want better performance, definitely you have to move ahead and have more resources dedicated to these boxes. GUI mode installation, simple. You have to just have the right package. If you see, you have Linux 32.bin, or you can have Windows 32. So you can go with bin installer, or you can use Windows depending on what operating system you are using. Once you have done that, installation process is similar across different operating systems, right? If you see what all screens you will get, and the screenshots are entirely taken from the actual process. So you start up with the installer, net or package, right? When we say net installer, it means it will go and pull the installation file from network using network. When it says package, it means it is locally present on your box. So select, double click and start installation. Now, other important thing is home directory. Now please understand that this home directory will be needed when you go and configure your WebLogic with other, you say, tools. For example, I want to configure my SOA based products, right? So I need to indicate that where is my WebLogic home, because I want my SOA based product to use the current WebLogic which we have installed. So it has to, you have to ensure that you make a note of your home directory, because you may need it further as well, right? So once you are sure, you have to go and specify the right home directory. Now permissions and all must be appropriate, because you need to have read and write both permissions. If you don't have permission as a user, it becomes a problem. So user management need to be done properly. Now registering for support, I feel you understand this. Then comes type of installation, typical or custom.
Hey, I got a quick question there.
Yeah.
When you talk about that, your home directory,
Yeah.
yeah, up there. So if I don't want to use a default, I can create my own home directory.
Yeah, if you can create your own home directory as well. You see, even if you have not created and if you have specified your own directory structure, some operating system will go and create it for you, right? And in
Okay.
some case of like in case of Linux, you may need to first create and then you may need to specify. I mean, you can choose whatever directory structure you want, wherever you want your WebLogic server to be. Wherever you want product files of your WebLogic server to be placed, you can go and you can specify that.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Fine. Now comes typical and custom install. Typical is something which is automated. No, Philip. This length is not a matter of concern on Unix box. It's a good question actually, but it is matter of concern on you say Windows, because Windows have a fixed limit. You cannot move beyond that particular path length. Okay. So try to keep length short in case if you are using Windows. Fine. But on Unix, you can have any length. Now, typical install means it will do installation of everything, whatever components are there. But sometimes you may not need certain components. So you may need to customize, you may wish to customize, or you may like to customize your installation and have only those components typically which will be needed by your applications today or tomorrow. Later when you need those, you can go and you can add, right? So I will suggest you to go with custom because it helps you to select resources that you need. It helps you to optimize usage of existing RAM and storage that you have, right? So you have these components. If you see core application server. Now, when we say core application server, this actually contains capability of helping you to create containers. What containers? Web container, EJB container, right? So all those containers capabilities there in core application server, right? All functionality, you can say this is kernel or heart of WebLogic. Whenever you make any request, whether it is admin request or it is you can say developer's request, you can say whether it is deploying an EJB or it is creating a new JDBC connection pool, all those requests will be made to core application server services. So this is important and mandatory. Then you have administrative console. Now this administrative console is an application. It's a web application. And responsibility of this web application is to help you in managing your WebLogic server, right? Again, it's an optional component because you can do it using other interfaces as well. You don't need always administrative console, and since you like to do you say management or administration using command line, you may skip this, right? Then you have Web 2.0, WebLogic JDBC driver, third-party JDBC driver, server client, WebLogic server plugin, UDDI, and jQuery support. All of them are optional. You will go for this only if you have to register certain web services, right? If you want to have WebLogic get integrated with web servers externally, then only you need this. If need is not there, you don't go with that. WebLogic server client can also be optional. It can be there only on client boxes. JDBC driver, you decide what all databases you need. If I know that I need to connect only to Oracle, why do I need to have all this, right? So these are some of them which you need to decide. Mandatory ones, if you see, I'll go for core application server and I'll go for administrative console also for doing initial administration so that I can understand that what all components are actually there. Now, when you are doing this, actually it installs product files, right? It copies product files to your box. Next is select your JDK, whether you will go for Sun or you will go for Oracle, JRocket. Recommendation is of JRocket, because Sun was taken over by WebLogic. So now in new versions they are supporting 100% Sun also. You can say Oracle is supporting JDK from Sun because they have equally optimized it, right? But when Sun was not part of Oracle, suggestion was to go with Oracle JRocket because it was customized for WebLogic installation. You need not much worry about memory settings and all. But if you are using Sun, you have to go and customize the setting as per WebLogic need in terms of heap, in terms of others. Fine. So you have done this here. Choose product installation directory. So if you see here, first directory that you are choosing is home directory for your Oracle installer, that is Fusion middleware. And within Fusion middleware, one of the component is WebLogic server. So you are specifying now where actually, yes, where actually you will have your WebLogic server, right? So you see, Oracle actually came up with Oracle Fusion middleware component, right? And WebLogic server is just one of the components of Fusion middleware. You have others also like portal server and all, right? So what we are doing as of now, we are doing installation of WebLogic server. So this is home of WebLogic server, please understand. And that was home of Fusion middleware, right? This is for middleware home directory. You have many middlewares. WebLogic server is just one of them. So you have two home directories. One is for WebLogic server, other one was for Fusion middleware. Okay. So make note of this as well because you may need it when you have to probably give it to your developers. Tell your developers what WebLogic server you are using and they have to deploy applications where. Right? So middleware home directory is this and you have WebLogic server home directory is this. Right? So be careful when you specify. So once you have done, it will, depending on the components which you have, it will start the installation, right? And once you get this to 100%, it means your WebLogic server product files are installed. You still don't have, you say, any domain created, which will typically contain all your, you say, all your deployments, but you have product files ready with you, right? Is this clear? So this is how actually you will go and you will install WebLogic server. Now comes console mode installation. If you see, you have to just go and specify what? bin -mode console. So now it will not launch that GUI, which is a Swing application. It will ask you on command line itself. Then comes silent mode, where you don't want to you don't want to have an interactive installation. So you created an XML file, and in that XML file, you specified what all you want. For example, what all console components you need, which JDK you want to use, what will be the product home directory. So all this will be now specified in XML, right? Is that clear, Ehsan? So probably we will be trying out all three, right? Okay. So will be trying out all three mode of installation. Good. Now what after installation? After installation, you have certain activities to be done. That is, go and check registry.dat, and it contains registry.xml file. And this file actually records what all products are there in your current Fusion middleware box, right? Fine. So this tells what all components are there. You may have others also apart from WebLogic server. Now utils, it contains some extra utilities, and this is the home directory where actually you will have your containers. Then logs contains installation log, and modules contains ZAR files, which will be used by rest of the WebLogic services. Right? Just go and check it. If you see ls, you will get common inventory sample server, and here when you go to FMW, you will get very important one, WebLogic server, and also JDK. So important ones, if you see, are WebLogic server and this. And what all Fusion middleware components are installed, that entry will be there in registry.xml file. Okay. So this is what is post-installation activity that you have to do. Now, your WebLogic server, when you go and Philip.
Is the JRocket installed separately, or this is part of the installation bundle?
It is part of the installation.
Okay. Okay. But in some cases, some of the WebLogic software doesn't come with JDK. It simply references the one you installed separately.
Yeah, some of them you have to, but JRocket comes bundled with your server installation pack itself.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So that means if I am downloading a complete package from Oracle side, I don't really have to get the separate Java for it. It will have JRocket in it, in that package.
Yeah, you will have.
Okay.
Okay, it starts with JRocket installation only, you see. If you select this, it starts with installation of JDK only. You see, JDK chooses for use with this product installation will be installed, right? So if you want to use an existing Java which is already there on your box, you can go and select that. If you will not select, it will install this. Oracle JRocket will be installed.
So sometime like when you download this product on your laptop,
yeah,
you know, so when you download it and if you do not select your previous version, what you have on it, and you let it go with the JRocket, then all your other applications having problems because some application is not compatible with the new version of Java.
Yes. See, new version of Java compatibility will be there, Asan. What happens when you try to install or when you try to run a program which is compiled on higher version of JDK, and when you try to run it on lower version of JDK, that creates problem. But if you have written a program with a lower version of JDK, and if you are trying to run it on a higher version of JDK, that is fine, that works.
Oh, so okay, so keep it. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now, as I told you that when you will do installation, you will get two types of files. One is product files. Now, if you see your WebLogic server has product files, like common. The files shared by WebLogic server components. So all components will share the same common directory. It includes ZAR files, it includes various utilities which are there. Samples, for looking at samples which are deployed, server is very important, right? Because this is what contains all the server components. Uninstall contains uninstall utility. So these are common product files, right? Now whenever you will go and create a domain, for that particular domain you will have a different directory, and each domain will have its own utilities to manage instances which are part of that particular domain, right? So management that you will do most of the time will be of domains, right? But all domains will share these common files which are part of your WLS server 10.0. So these are called as product files. Then you will have second type of file called as domain files, right? Which will be typically one for each domain. Fine. So after you have done, now you have to set the environment.
So that is what is called user product?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now you have environment settings that you have to do. So what need to be done? Run set WLS-env, which comes as a tool, and it is used to set WL home, Java home, path, and class path. Right? Typically, it contains another sh file called as common env.sh, and its responsibility is to set Oracle home, Ant home, Pointbase home, because these are some of the build elements which are needed when actually execution of deployer internally present in you say Oracle server starts, right? So Oracle itself, or you can say your WebLogic itself, contains certain executables. For example, when I click on deploy, you will have some deployer application which will run, which will go and take the application from the source and then make it available in the deployed directory, right, in managed directory. So when it goes and does that, when it does those executions, it needs reference to Ant home. Pointbase is the default database which is distributed along with your WebLogic server to maintain internal configurations, right? If you have Oracle, you can also specify Oracle home, right? So these are some of the environmental variables which are set. It's not necessary that you run these files, you can go and set it manually as well. Then some of the environmental variables are operating system specific, right? For example, Unix, Generic, and Windows, right? So find out what all are there: location, path, path variable names, and etc. Right? So we will talk about them when we start up with our installation, because there are various variables which are operating system specific. So this is what is the complete list of environmental variables. You have BA home, middleware home, WL home, Java home, Java options, Java vendor, right, which tells whether you are using Oracle, you are using Sun, whether you are using OpenJDK, or you are using a WebLogic JRocket. Then which Java you are using, 32-bit or 64-bit, right? Very important, because it has impact over heap allocation. If you are using 64-bit, you can allocate unlimited heap. Then comes other important one, whether you are in production mode or in development mode, right? What is name of the server? Memargs, for memory. We'll explore more once we move further, but these are some of them which are important ones. Anything related to Java is important here. Why? Because it has impact over resource allocation. Because all your WebLogic containers, or whether you are running or deploying an application, those applications also, when they start, they use JVM, right? Because all of them are JVM based. So these are very important elements that actually you need to consider. So these are a list of different environmental variables which are there, which you will find in your XML file. Documentation, not a concern. You all know that you can go and you can download, right? Now from where actually you will be downloading software? From OTN network. If you see Oracle Fusion middleware, 10G, 11G, 12G, whatever you want, you can select it, accept, and then go and get the net installer, or you can go and you can physically download WebLogic. Right? These are some of the ways in which actually you can work. We will be using wget again, like we have used it in Hadoop, in order to get the software, right? So we'll, hello, yeah, I'm there. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, fine. So what I was saying was, we will be using wget because we will prefer doing everything command line, right, Hasan?
Yeah. I didn't get your previous slide. What you were saying in the previous slide, which was environment. Okay, from here, yeah, it's this far.
Well, we can do either way, command line or GUI. You know, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you see, these are important environmental variables because they will have impact over resource allocation, because you know that your WebLogic itself runs on top of Java, and whatever applications you will write, they also uses Java. So they become important. Now, for example, Java use 64-bit. You know it will have impact because if it is 64-bit, heap allocation can be unlimited. But if it is 32-bit, you have a limit. You cannot go beyond 2 GB of heap.
Okay.
Right? So these becomes important from perspective of administration, and especially when you go with failover and all. This is documentation which is not important. You can download, and we'll be downloading using wget utility. Right. So this is what is there, which we'll be doing, installing WebLogic server 11G as well as 12G. We will do it together so that we can know both simultaneously. And obviously I will focus on what is difference between 11G and 12G in greater depth. Fine. So now we are aware about how actually installation is done. We have now product files ready with us, right? Once product files are there with us, our next objective is to plan our architecture to see what all actually is required in order to enable me, in order to enable us to take care of our applications. Because at the end of the day, objective of WebLogic server is to provide us an environment where actually we can deploy and manage our enterprise applications written in Java, and where it has used flavors of JEE, that is Java Enterprise Edition, right? So this is what is something which we are going to talk about, and this becomes very important because you know your architecture setup starts from here itself. When you go and create a domain, it means you are going and creating an administrative unit for your entire enterprise application, right? An enterprise application, you know, is what? Enterprise application is actually combination of n number of functional units. Right. For example, let me talk about enterprise application first. Application types. So when I say enterprise, your enterprise application provides capability of having multiple, I'll write here, contains many functional units. And please understand, each functional unit is independent of other. This is what is very important to understand, right? In case of JEE specification, or you say JEE spec, have following application types. One is called as EAR, right? And EAR is what? Enterprise Archive. It means I will bundle enterprise application into enterprise archive. Hello? Hello? Am I there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, fine.
I can hear you too. Yeah.
Okay. Now this EAR is combination of multiple functional units where each functional unit may come up with two components. So I'll write here functional unit. This is our terminology that we use, functional unit. Now this functional unit will have a interface through which end user will interact, called as web archive, typically called as WAR. And it may have certain distributed components also, which are called as EJB, and they are bundled with WAR. Now one EAR can have multiple WARs, multiple EARs, right? So when I say scope, you need to understand, you'll have WAR, this is EAR, and inside this EAR, you may have multiple WARs. And you may have multiple EJBs or EJBs. So think of banking. You may have one where for, you say, net banking. You may have one where for customer support, or you say for loan banking. Now these are two different wheres, and these two may be logic for net banking, so EGBs, and this may be logic for loan banking. So typically if you see, it contains all functional unit in a single EAR, right? And when we say a domain, responsibility of domain is to provide environment so that your enterprise applications need can be met, right? So for example, your loan may talk to some external environment, right? So all that can be taken care by your EARs, right? And responsibility is to have a domain which provides all the components which are needed by your enterprise application or multiple enterprise applications, right? So you can say domain actually is a administrative unit, right? It builds an administrative unit for administrators. So if I say that I'm managing WebLogic, it's typically I'm managing a domain, right? Which contains a number of EARs, which has all the resources configured in it, right? So after doing installation of product files, your second objective should be to go and create a domain or configure a domain, right? So we'll see what all are the common elements of a domain. As I told you, domain is the basic administrative unit. It always includes one WebLogic server instance. So now you have, let's classify our server into two types. One is administrative server, and second is, you say, managed servers, right? So when we say managed servers, your applications that you will deploy typically will be deployed in managed server, and your administrative applications which are there to help you in administrating your WebLogic domain, probably other managed servers as well, is what is called as WebLogic administrative unit or administrative server, right? So if you see here, you have one admin server. All administrative commands will be sent to this admin server, and this admin server will take responsibility of working on it, right? So you have managed server here, and you have clusters. Cluster 1, cluster 2, and these clusters will be what? They will contain a number of managed servers for the workload management or failover, right? This NM here is node manager, which is mandatory. So it is clear what is a WebLogic domain. It's an administrative unit, which may contain what? It may contain admin server and a number of managed servers. And those managed server can also be organized or can also be actually made available in form of a cluster. So that in case if one managed server is down, other takes over the responsibility. Okay. So now your administration is typically bound to how well you manage a domain, right? Fine. So you have now administrative server, you have managed server, and you have cluster of servers. This is what can be part of your domain. Let me move forward. Today we'll finish so that next class we are able to start with installations and domain configuration. So you see what happens. You'll have console. All your request goes from console to administrative server, and this administrative server goes and does the task on various managed servers. So for example, you say I want to deploy. So if you want to deploy, you will use a command that deploy this EAR. That will go to administrative server, which will make the required changes in the configuration repository, and they will go and complete the task of deployment on whatever server you have selected where you want that application to be deployed. Right? So your administrative server basically does get and set on configuration files. Apart from that, it also goes and logs messages. Right? Is this clear, this diagram? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So now this console can be web console. This console can also be normal GUI console. So after installation, next task is to configure a domain, and you have to plan your domain again, as I told you, by asking question, do I need a cluster? If I need a cluster, how many managed servers will be there in that cluster? And where, on what boxes those managed servers will be installed? Right? Do I need to have database connection pool? Do I need to configure security? And do I need to deploy GUI application? If yes, where? Right? So these are collection of resources which actually will be part of a domain. Now you can create multiple domains using the same WebLogic installation. But please remember, resources of one domain will not be shared with resources of other domain. These two are exclusive unit of administration. Okay, so you cannot reuse your domain objects which are there on other domain. So if I have created a connection pool on domain 1, I cannot use that same connection pool on domain 2. Okay, these two are separate administrative units, though they will share common product files. So there are different ways of creating domain. You can create domain by using command line, or you can start a wizard itself that takes you step by step and helps you to create a domain along with the required components. Before you create a domain, you need to ensure that whether you want development or test environment, or you want it to be in production environment. We all know that when we move something to production, licensing need to be taken care, right? So before you go and make it available on data centers, you need to procure license from Oracle, right? Development or test environment, it's free. It comes with inbuilt licenses that can be used, right? Typically used for testing and development. How to start? Remember, you have two modes again here. One is graphical, second is console, right? You'll have domain template, existing domain template. If you already have created a domain template, so that you can use that template anytime you are creating a domain, you can go and create a domain template. Right? But typically, in order to create a domain, you will be running a utility called as configuration wizard, which can be done in two different ways. One is graphical, second is console. And this is what is the complete process. Very important. Just give some 2 minutes to look at it. Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. You can have a small coffee break and come back. We will discuss on this because this is most important part, which actually helps you to have your own workflow defined. Okay, so we'll start the break now. I'll be on this slide. Ehsan?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we'll be back in 5 minutes. Just have a look over this carefully so that we can discuss on it. And please do ask questions, whatever you don't understand here.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll start. So, have you gone through this? Now, if you see, these are the steps. You have to start, choose domain, no issues here, and select automatic support for other Fusion middleware products. As I told you that apart from WebLogic server, you will have huge range of products like portal server, right, ESBs. So you can select whatever actually will be there you want to be supported by your domain. Select domain source where actually you want it to be. Specify a user ID and password. Specify server start mode and JDK, right? So whether it's production or it is development, all that need to be selected here. Customize environment. If you want to customize, you can go and select yes. If no, you plan that you will be setting up the environment post domain creation. So you can go and you can select no, right? Just name it. After naming it, you will get a UI where you can go and customize, right? But if you plan that no, while installation itself I have to customize, then you can go and say yes. Configure the database, connection pools, configure administrative server, configure manage servers and clusters, assign servers to machines, right? You can configure machines on top of which your managed server will be there. Then go and configure database connectivity, JMS store, review your domain settings, finalizing it, and your domain is ready along with the customized environment, right? So you can do all this while domain creation as well, and you can plan to do it bit later as well whenever you feel that it is required, right? For example, as of now we don't need JMS store. Probably we may need it later during later stage of our applications development. So your application probably may claim that we now need JMS configuration as well. At that point of time also you can go and configure. But if this input is there before creating domain, you can go and you can configure JMS store there also, right? So these are few steps that you have to follow in order to customize your domain. You see, steps are pretty simple. This is GUI. Same will be there CUI. Yes or no, 1 or 2 will be the option. Create a new WebLogic domain, or you can extend an existing domain. Extending means what? I have configured JMS, but I have not configured JDBC connection pool. So you can select extend and you can go and modify the configuration settings. Other one is generate a domain configured automatically to support the following product, because we are using the pack which only contains WebLogic server. If you have other products of Fusion middleware also, you can go and select this. If you want your domain to follow a predefined template which you have designed so that installations can be replicated across other boxes as well, you can go and select the option called base this on an existing template, right? So these are some of the decisions that you have to take. Specify administrative username and password. Select the mode, development mode or production mode. Right? You know production. Production means now your application will be live for its end users, right? In production, JRocket is something which is preferred or recommended for better performance. This is what you need to consider, right? And for development, Sun JDK is recommended for better startup. So for development, you can go with Sun JDK. For production, you can go with JRocket. This is what is recommendation. Then you can go and select what all you want to configure. You want to configure the administrative server, you want to configure managed server, you want to configure RDBMS for security store. Next is configure the administrative server. Specify what is the listen address. You can specify listen address of various applications if you see. Right. Then you can go and create a cluster as well. And in cluster you can assign machines or proxies. Typically you can go and you can set up the entire architectures. If you see, you have assigned the machines here, right? All this will be doing. Then configure JDBC data source. You are specifying which database you are using, what is the URL, what is the port at which that database server is running, right? What is the service name. Apart from this, you can select other servers as well. It depends on you, like what server, what database you are using. Test connection to the database and then run the database script. Configure the store. If you see WebLogic store, this is for JMS, which we will see in greater detail. Customize applications. And then finally, configure RDBMS security store. You can click on test connection after specifying again user ID, because where user registry will be maintained, you are selecting RDBMS storage. You can also go and configure LDAP, but that is post domain creation. This is what is the review, that all this is what is you have configured. You have an admin server and you have 3 managed servers. Specify name of the domain and complete the creation process. It is a 22-step task. Yes, OID database as well. Philip, right. And this is what is the final directory structure. And if you see, user project will be there. Inside that, you will have a directory created, which name of the directory will be similar to name of your domain. Right. Important ones, auto deploy for hot deployment. So in case if I want to deploy an application, I can just go and paste it here in this folder. It automatically detects that application and completes the deployment process. Starting the server, stopping the server, controlling managed servers, node managers, everything is there in this bin. And your config contains configuration files which holds all the configuration units, and most important file is config.xml, which contains complete detail about your configuration. Right? Then you have servers, which has one directory for each server in the domain. So if you want to look for log and all, you can use this. Server name, this is again a directory, the directory of the WLS instance with the same name. So these all are the directories which will be created once you create your domain. Right? Fine. Starting and stopping WebLogic server, very simple. Syntax is Java options, fully qualified Java clause, and program name. And you see, these are some of the options. What is the minimum size of the heap? What is the maximum size of the heap? You can keep it in some file also, properties file also, or you can specify it while starting up the server. Class path, what all dependencies are there which you need to have in your class path. And then set up other dependencies, though you need not do because automatically it will be there, default ones. These are the class paths which are pointing to various libraries which will be internally used by your WebLogic server. Start by using weblogic.server or start weblogic.sh. These two ways are there, by using a script or by using start weblogic.sh. Once you will start, it will ask you username and password, enter username and password, and wait for a message called as server started in running mode. So now it has started your admin server. After your admin server starts, it will run administrative application on a particular port. Default is 7001. You can launch that and you will get that particular server. Administrative console, so that you can manage your application from there. Right? You can also use weblogic.server command, which is a script instead of using this, instead of using start weblogic.sh, and it contains all these configurations. You see, username, password. Right, so these are additional options which you can use. Min, max, server name, that all you can specify here. There are two types of shutdown. One is graceful and second is abrupt. Graceful is, it will stop the server from administrative console. So
in order to start the server, once you have done graceful shutdown, you need a command line action. But if it is abrupt, right, sudden termination, you can go and you can use Control C. So it will ensure that it immediately stops the server, stops processing any request. In case of graceful, it will not stop till all the processes currently attached are not stopped. This is what is something which you have to look for, right? Fine. So this was about domain. You can use config.sh here in order to start the domain wizard. Your configuration files repository is config. Inside this, you'll have config.xml file. You'll have config.xml file. This contains the main configuration unit. So these are some of the important information that you need to have in order to create or customize a domain. Ehsan, is that clear?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. So we are ready to go with two different exercises or labs now, which we will do in next session. First one is installation on Linux box, because you told that you'll be using some Linux box. And second is creating a domain. After domain is created, we will start up with administrative activities like configuring a cluster, adding more servers, managed servers to your cluster or to your boxes, and then deploying an application on a single server, deploying an application on a cluster, configuring your cluster so that your applications can take advantage of node balance, advantage of load balancing, workload management, failover, right? Understanding what is concept of machine, right? Understanding what is concept of node manager, understanding impact of node manager failure, right? Yes, Phil, we will be using AWS server for our exercises. Okay.
What is AWS?
Amazon Web Service. It's nothing but it's a box that we will be using.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Fine. So Anthony will call you tomorrow to plan the entire sessions what we are going to have. We'll have a calendar ready for us so that we can follow that calendar at both ends. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Ehsan.